as they have grown, I think they said last time it's about 3 times the size of what used to be whenever we're just playing, hunter-gatherers, whenever we were roaming with Neanderthals. Our brains weren't that big. Things like fire and being able to cook our meals and just being able to socialize, stuff like that. It made us smarter. It made our brains grow bigger. It made us more capable of doing a lot more things. But this talks about brain implants. So, an implant in the brain would allow us to remember a lot more things. We know what genes are involved in building the brain that's good at remembering these details. We might just change that. It sounds more like science fiction, but we can do that right now. So we can do a brain implant. The thing is, we don't know how to wire it up to make it useful. We're getting there, but it's very experimental. But I mean, the thing is that everybody looks at that as unethical, and a lot of people are afraid, especially in these moments now where people think they're getting injected with chips and they're being tracked down. I mean, even though we live, if you look at modern times, you have a phone, you have RFID chips on your clothes, you have all this stuff. You have a social security number, you have an ID, you have credit cards, you have all of these things are being, you have your laptops with you, everything. All these devices can be hacked to find out your information, your location, stuff like that. I don't know anybody that doesn't have a phone with them at all times. So that phone can be hacked into. You can figure out where somebody is at all times. So why would they need to put a chip in you to track you when they could have already been doing that for years? But anyways, this starts speaking about implants that we currently have, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but it says currently people have implants to fix an element of their body that's broken, such as a pacemaker or a hip implant. Those are things that are very, very helpful to keep us alive. We have things like for diabetics, they're insulin, and I think they're I don't know if it's been out yet, but I know there was an implant where you could I don't know if it's something that goes in your body or it's out of your body, but it's attached to you. But this thing pretty much works as a rather than inject yourself, it measures your insulin, or it measures your sugar levels for your blood for people with diabetes, and it gives you insulin as needed. And that is crazy. That is awesome. And I would say technology hasn't been this advanced in a long time. We're barely getting into these times where before you would wait months or years to get a vaccine, and now you're waiting a couple of, or I would say more, you're waiting a couple of years before to get a vaccine, and now you're waiting a couple of months, a couple of weeks. Very fast, and it can only improve over time. So one of the things that we can do right now, but before I say this, we do not know the full-on effect of this. It's new, so we don't know the people that are getting this. We don't know what will happen to them in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. I don't know if this could be a cause of mutation, cause cancer, stuff like that. But designer babies. So what that is, it's scientists already have the technology to change the genes of an embryo. Though it's controversial and no one's sure what happens next, in the future it may be unethical not to change certain genes. So if, like, let's say you have a certain gene in your family that could be passed on to a kid that is bad, why would you not want to get that out of your family? Why would you want to pass that on? So it could be viewed as unethical not to do it. But like I said, we would need to experiment more with this. But at the moment, you can change genetics for an embryo. If you wanted to have a certain kind of eyes or be, more athletic and things like that. So in the future, it might be a thing where you'll look at, you'll want to have a baby and you'll say, hey, I wanted to have these kind of eyes, this colored hair, I wanted to be tall, I wanted to be short. And then this article kind of goes a step above that and speaks about trends. So, oh man, there is a lot of examples even in the past, like in I think it's China, in China, where they would wrap a girl's feet, toes, or like their feet, so they wouldn't grow, so they would look like really small, because in the past, really small feet, I think the trend was called binding. They would have really small feet and they would be deformed feet, and at the time it was seen as like something like beautiful. So could the trends affect how our babies come out? Because we'll look at a trend like, oh my god, that baby is beautiful, I want to do that to my baby, and we give that gene, and then those babies grow up and they might have issues. Because I know when the Chinese were doing the binding, they would say that later on in life those children did have issues walking and stuff like that, bone structure. Is that something that could happen with this messing with people's genes? Obviously we could use it for right things, we could use it to eliminate bad genes, but as well we could use it for nonsense stuff, like wanting your kid to be a specific height or a specific eye color and stuff like that. And it kind of the quote that says here is, what we do with breeds of dogs will basically be doing with humans. And that's a good way to put it. But it also talks about other things that are a lot more, I guess, better. For example, I myself wear glasses, and it's talking about technology for appearance, technology to better yourself, like an artificial eye. What if, people that lose their eyes due to an accident or just due to a disease, they can get an artificial eye so they can see again. People that wear glasses, I'm pretty sure in the next decade, in the next, couple of years, we're gonna have glasses that improve your vision, so you won't really need, prescription. The glasses will probably do it for you. But they're talking about a whole eye that you can just get a brand new eye, and it can even be better than 20/20 vision. They're speaking of an eye that can zoom in and out and give you 3 times the zoom and stuff like that. And that's pretty crazy, because if you think about it, if you had a zoom in your vision, you could see the moon. You wouldn't really need a telescope. Obviously looking farther different frequencies of color and visuals, obviously making us be able to see more detail, curing color blindness, things like that. And this one talks about skin color. So it says some groups are reproducing at higher or lower rates. Populations in Africa, for example, are rapidly expanding, so those genes increase at a higher frequency on a global population level. Areas of light skin color are reproducing at lower rates. Therefore, there is a prediction that skin color from a global perspective will get darker. It's almost certain that it's almost certainly the case that dark skin color is increasing in frequency on a global scale relative to light skin color, he said. I'd expect the average person several generations out from now will have darker skin color than they do now. As well, I was reading another article that said with a darker skin color, that would actually be an advantage, because as global warming comes in, as we start getting more UV radiation, stuff like that, obviously in whiter complexion, like lighter skin tones, you can have increase in skin cancer and things like that. On the future of the human population, and we talk about evolution, we also have to speak on the things that might bring forward our need to evolve. Obviously, things like global warming will be one that we'll get into in a minute, because I guess it'll be brief. I guess with the increase in heat, our bodies will have to adapt to that. Our oceans absorb most of that heat, so these fishes and these coral reefs and all these things have to adapt to that change in temperature. The thing that we don't realize is that even a degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees in temperature change are massive to our environment. And now with global warming, we're talking about more like 10 degrees, 30 degrees, 40 degrees in the worst case scenarios. So obviously our bodies will have to adapt to that. Sadly, the other species that don't will end up going extinct, and in a lot of circumstances you see that happening. You see animals that can't adapt, so they end up going extinct or being on the verge of extinction. And then you have other species that, are able to adapt, but it's sad that global warming is something we're gonna have to adapt to, just because it seems like humans are not going to make it any better. So even though we don't really depend on fish, a lot of us that do eat fish every year might contribute to bringing those animals into extinction or close to extinction. Things that we'll start to slowly see, but we won't live long enough to perfect or see those inner mutations increase or be very useful, at least in our lifetime, will be the mutations or the things that happen when we start doing space exploration. So space exploration is actually very stressing on our human body for many reasons. It affects from our eyes to your bones to even your brain, and it affects even the smallest things like your red blood cells and stuff like that. Here are some things in space that our astronauts currently deal with that maybe after some time our body will have to change to start being able to live in these space conditions. So with space, obviously there's no gravity, but let's say you go to other places like Mars where there is gravity. The issue with that is that the gravity in Mars isn't as strong as on Earth. So you're like 1/3 of your weight in Mars. You're was that 3 times lighter? Or yeah, one third. So the gravity doesn't work against your bones as much as they do on Earth, which could lead to your bones losing minerals, and in return make your bones weaker, and your density would drop to about 1% osteoporosis, where your bones get really, really weak and really brittle. It, we don't know to a certain extent how dangerous that could be. Obviously, if you come back, your bones will get stronger in earth, but is it going to be that same way for everybody? And these issues could lead to weakness in muscles, endurance, and even heart problems. And the only way to kind of work on that would be for proper food, which whenever you travel to space, they're working on it. But whenever you travel to space, obviously you don't have, like you would here, you don't have fresh products. You kind of have to freeze everything, and you kind of have to work with what you have. But NASA's trying to find out better ways to keep I guess the food's freshness whenever they send it out to space. So in the future, when we need to take things for longer runs, we still get enough nutrients from that food. And the other thing would be working out. So workouts is very important because as you're floating through space, the less amount of work needed by the less amount of gravity will cause our bodies to use less work. Another thing that would be affected by the loss of gravity would be the fluids in our body. The fluids in your body shifts upwards into your head. That's why I said it could also affect your brain, and it does because you have more pressure in your brain. And this also goes pressure in your eyes, which would cause vision problems. Some people say they have blurry vision, and some people actually have no vision at all. Another thing is you're apt to develop kidney stones due to dehydration and increased excretion of calcium from your bones. So it's very important to stay hydrated and, like I said, do your exercise. So again, this section will talk about exercise. Exercise is shown to keep your heart healthy, your bones and muscles strong, your mind alert, and your outlook more positive. Even now in Earth, they always say exercise is good for you, for your body, but it also is good to fight things like depression and stuff like that. So it gives you a positive outlook, and it'll help obviously a lot with your balance and coordination. With gravity taking different things, obviously when you're on Earth, you drop something, and your first thing, you reach down and you try to catch it. In Earth, that won't happen. So you drop something, it'll float up. And now imagine living that way for 6 months. When you come back to Earth, your coordination, your balance might be a little bit off. You will get proper nutrition, including vitamin D supplements, since you can't walk outside under the sun. Things, you'll have to be careful for things like radiation. Like I said before, you won't really see like crazy mutations. Everything happens kind of like inside your body, not really outside, so you won't grow a third arm. But I said you might. I was joking, but with obviously the extra radiation, which I think is like 6 times more in space, and it'll be even way more when you get into closer ranges like Mars. Like I said, you can't walk outside, so you'll be given vitamin D supplements, but you're still exposed to that radiation, which could in long term cause or give you a higher chance of having cancer. So I was wrong. On here it says on the space station, astronauts receive over 10 times the radiation than what naturally occurs on Earth. Radiation exposure may increase your cancer risk. It can damage and it can damage your central nervous system with both acute effects and later consequences, manifesting itself as altered cognitive function, reduced motor function, and behavioral changes. Space radiation can also cause radiation sickness that results in nausea, vomiting, anorexia, and fatigue. You could develop degenerative tissue diseases such as cataracts, cardiac, and circulatory disease.